Welcome to Weekly Tips for Social Media Freelancers. I've been wanting to do this for so long, and I'm so excited to get started today, right now, with this tip. And there's going to be a lot of tips about ClickUp, but not only to ClickUp, because productivity does not begin and end with ClickUp. But today we're going to talk about ClickUp and how to structure it, because that is the first question or first concern that most people who come into ClickUp are thinking about. How do I set it up? There's all these different levels. And what I want to draw your attention to specifically is how your structure impacts your time tracking. So if you're currently freelancing and you're using a time tracking tool, a third-party time tracking tool, that's great. But what I want to show you is how cool it is to have your time tracking be inside of ClickUp, and how your structure can give you insight into how you're running your business, and also what information you're including on your invoice. What are the line items? What are you telling your client you're doing, and how are you billing them, and how do you have that information? All of this comes back to how you set up your ClickUp, believe it or not. So let's just jump right into it. So I've got an example up on the screen here called Client Example, and I have a space. So space, it goes, let me just move my cursor, it goes space, folder, list. And you can have docs within that as well. So that's like the hierarchy from a high level. And spaces are essentially meant to capture like the functions of your business, right? So you can see here I've got like operations, CRM, delivery, growth. This is kind of a new structure I'm trying, but the most important thing that we're talking about right now is client services or delivery, whatever you want to call it. Client work, delivery, client services, those are all kind of the same thing. So essentially you're going to create a space called whatever works for you, client work, client space, client, you get the point. And then within that, you're going to use a folder for your client, right? And folders have this really beautiful, so this is ClickUp 3.0 for the record. I've just started using it not that long ago, and I'm so in love with a lot of the functionality of it already. But what I like most is this overview screen at the folder level. So it gives me an opportunity to attach resources, which is cool. So I've got my brand guidelines here, a square logo. You could put anything that you would typically be referencing kind of ongoing that could be an attachment. I've also got two docs here that are attached underneath of the folder. So it's kind of nested within the folder, and they show up here as well. So I've got a doc for personas, competitors, and then it kind of lists out the lists that I have beneath that. I just kind of think this is a cool little summary of all of the kind of functions of the work that I'm doing for a client. And kind of that brings me to the next thing, which is your lists. So the way you want to set up your list or think about setting up your list is in terms of what you're doing for your client and really how you've sold it to them as well. So let's say you have a client and you're doing social media management for them. What did you sell to them? Did you just say we were going to do 1 month of content and that's kind of it? That's fine. But what really within that is it breaks down to a couple different functions, right? We're not just doing social media management or like creating content. Typically, there are some account management efforts involved as well, like having your monthly client calls or just ad hoc client times where they're like messaging you or they're asking you for various things. I also like to have a task set up for project management. So if I'm spending time kind of planning out the tasks that we're doing and just making sure that everything is kind of project planned out, I have a spot to track that as well, because that all ladders up to account management, right? And social media management, same sort of thing. It's like creating a content calendar, performing our daily account monitoring. We're also probably going to be doing reporting and analytics. So we have our monthly report. Maybe we do a weekly analytics check-in. These are all kind of functions of doing social media management for a client. Now, bear with me. How does this come back to time tracking? So as you can see, I have a section here for time tracked. And what's cool about ClickUp is when you're working on something, you can just simply select the time tracker timer and it's just timing in the background. It shows up here in the top, so you never kind of forget about it. And it just creates a summary of the hours you've done or time that you've done for that particular task. So how does this come back to our dashboard? So we're going to use a dashboard for time tracking. And the reason the file structure matters, or the way you structure your setup in ClickUp, is because it is directly related to how you can organize and review that information in your dashboard. So let's say it's time to come create an invoice for your client for the month. Let's say you do hourly for now. So if I have it set up right now where the layers are folder and list, then I have the option to kind of bring this menu down and I can see, okay, I've spent 3.5 hours on account management this month. I did 15 hours on social media management and 2 hours, 25 minutes on reporting and analytics. So I could then come to the invoice and create those line items if you wanted to provide that kind of clarity to your client and break it down in that way. And I think that's really helpful for a client, especially because they like to have some insight into what it is that they're paying you for rather than just one kind of lump amount. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter specifically when it comes to the invoice. What matters is for yourself too, is to know how long it's taking you to do these certain elements of the work you're doing for the client. It can present an opportunity for you to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm spending a lot of time on social media management, and I think that I could probably pare that down a little bit. Or let's say you're doing a fixed amount for a client. That's even a better example of why this would be important and helpful. Is if you say you're charging somebody $500 a month for social media management. That seems like a common amount for like new freelancers to do. And then you come and look at this and you think, oh my gosh, this is a lot of time. I've done 21 hours and $500 for the month. This isn't really profitable for me. Like, how can I make this more effective? How can I pare back on the time that I'm doing social media management? And it gives you the opportunity to think more like a business owner in that way, right? It's like we're thinking more strategically in terms of our operations and where there are places that we can improve. And ultimately, having this insight comes down to how we set up our client folder. And that's why it's so important to look at it in that sense. I think this is something that we tend to overlook when it comes to setting up our ClickUp. I've looked at other videos and it really doesn't ever speak to specifically the element of scope management, like scope being the amount of work we're doing for our clients. So whatever we sold to them, how much we told them we were going to sell to them, and what we actually did. If there's a huge variance between those, it's essential that we know that so that we can either make improvements to how we're doing the work or ask for more money, like have a conversation around the fact that we actually need more money to do this type of work, right? It gives you that confidence too, to have those numbers to look at and say, hey, I'm spending this much time per month and this is what you're paying me, and it's not adding up anymore. You have the evidence to back what you're saying, and I feel like it's a lot easier to come into those conversations with confidence when you have that. So I hope that's helpful in how to set up your structure, or how to think about how to set up your structure. This is the very beginning of what I have so much content to share around how to use ClickUp for social media freelancing, whether you're doing ads or content creation, and not just ClickUp. As I said, there's lots of other tips I'm going to be doing around productivity and all sorts of tools that I can get into. So I hope this was helpful. I can't wait to share more. If you want to get this stuff sent to your inbox rather than worrying about when they're coming out, please sign up to my email list. I'll be sending out a weekly email with all of these tips. Okay, great. I'll look forward to seeing you next week.